The moment I laid my eyes on the first teaser trailer for Alien Romulus, I had a good feeling it might be incredible. But now that it has finally arrived, it's time to give you my thoughts, because there is so much to talk about. Welcome to Sandwich Reviews. I'm the Talking Sentient Sandwich, and not in a long time have I seen a movie like this that goes back and forth between phenomenally tense to stupidly lax so many times. I enjoyed the majority of the time I had watching this, but the quality does go up and down. I was never bored, but I definitely had my problems with this story. And while most of the cast felt expendable and some of their dialogue came off as stilted, I still enjoyed their dynamics, being fond of the ones that I was supposed to and hating the specific character that the writers chose to make all the conflict spawn from. And while she doesn't get quite as much emotional focus as I would have liked, I still thought the protagonist was a great main character for an Alien movie. I remember the filmmakers saying that Romulus was somewhere in the middle of Alien and Aliens, and that is true, so long as you add Alien 3 and Resurrection, because it really did feel like a mixture of all of the Alien movies, including the bad stuff. The movie also sped up the growing period of each stage of the alien. Where something took a whole afternoon to gestate in the original, in this movie it took minutes to fully form. I would have cared a lot more about that, but the movie was good enough that I was never bored enough to mull it over. When the movie hit its highs, it was really good. Shot phenomenally, with a blend of practical and special effects that always convinced me what was happening was real and dangerous. Whenever the filmmakers were going for tension, they succeeded. But when it hit its lows, it was bafflingly inept. And I hope it was just my theater, but the lighting was extremely dark, making a lot of the sequences hard to comprehend. Just made the whole thing that one episode of Game of Thrones. If you know, you know. I also shouldn't go any further without mentioning how much Andy was a treasure. I have so much to say about him later on in the spoiler section, but for now, all I'll say is that I adored his character and would have gone on a rampage if he wasn't okay. But back to the plot, because in it, there were some rare sequences that seemed almost student film, pushing in on a dozen different cantric angles. As well as that, the plot was made needlessly complicated in parts, then at other times needlessly convenient and obvious something is there just to give the main character an easy out in a later sequence. But that's Alien Romulus for you, so if you're willing to overlook some flaws, turn your brain off, and have a genuinely great time with a tension-filled horror movie that's not quite as smart as it's trying to come off as, check it out, because I had a blast. But if you're wondering how something can be a lot of fun while also not being that great, it's time to dive right into that with lots of spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, this is your last chance to pause the video, because there is a truck full of spoilers that I, for one, was not expecting. Ready? Alright. The first thing I should bring up is how all three trailers for this movie are amazing, but they spoil way too much. The moment I saw the pilot, I knew exactly how she was going to die, because her viewing the chest burster inside of her with the mini X-ray was a big part of every single trailer. That's not new, and I've always been unable to stop my brain from piecing together a narrative from the segments I'd already seen in a trailer, but horror especially thrives on having its viewer being kept in the dark. If you go back to the first Alien movie, one of my favorite aspects of that is that it isn't apparent Ripley is the protagonist until Dallas is killed, because before then, it kinda is him. But in Romulus, it's immediately obvious that Rain is the protagonist. It doesn't open the movie with her getting out of cryosleep, but it does follow the formula of other Alien movies. All except for Andy, who was almost the villain of the movie. With that, I wish they either went in a different direction or went 100% with that storyline. I'm kinda glad Andy was able to be rebooted and redeemed, because his and Rain's relationship was the heart and soul of the narrative. But it might have been better to see him as an antagonist for longer. Instead, the villain role was given to not Ash. I say it's not Ash, but it basically was. Which is a bit weird considering Ian Holm is dead, and even if the deepfake was good, which it was not, his inclusion wasn't necessary at all. The same emotional story could have been told with any company android, because the only reason why so much work was put into displaying Ash back in an Alien movie was so nerds like me would go, hey, it's the one thing from the one thing. The plot also ham-fistedly introduces a cure-all synthesized from alien blood that, surprise, doesn't work and just turns you into a monster. I knew it would be a third act twist, because all alien movies have to have one, but if you put aside the whole narrative, that isolated element of the plot is really intriguing. The idea of the original alien being found, put in a lab environment, and harvested is an incredibly fascinating story that I would have loved to see more of. It is all there in the background, but it should have played more into the overarching chain of events, rather than just being a plot device dispenser. And the moment the characters were given it, I had a feeling it would go to the pregnant lady. I mean, that's the most messed up thing the writers could have done, so of course they went for that. And the resulting monster was something that we've already seen in something like Resurrection, and I've never liked the idea of an alien-human hybrid, but this was executed much better, at least at first. That's not saying much, but the first shot of it fully grown as it stared at its mother in shadow with long sunken eyes had me shook. Minutes later, we got a clearer look at it, and I was much less afraid. Not that I would want to be stuck in a room with that thing, but once we got a good look at its face, I thought it looked a bit goofy. Also, before I conclude, I have to mention that the rings around a planet are not that solid. They are made of big old rocks, but they're not that close together. The distance between each one is massive. I'm sure you already know that, and it's not like this franchise has ever required pure realism, but it did take me out for a second. But what are your thoughts on Alien Romulus? Did you enjoy it as much as I did, despite its many flaws? Leave a comment and let me know. And as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly video essays and reviews, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.